Welcome to Strata. I'm Glenn.
And I'm Brandon. Welcome to the Minds on Muscle podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another fantastic episode of the Minds on Muscle podcast. I am here with my wonderful co-host, Mr. Glendon Owen. How you doing?
Hi, Brandon. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am doing great, thank you. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, a topic that Glenn and I are both very passionate about, and it is one of the few certification education program processes that has really revolutionized both our practice, our business, and how we get to help clients. Today, we're talking about Exercise Professional Education's program, the Muscle System Specialist Program. And before I got to say this, is that this program, I'm hoping we can talk about things that are pragmatic to you, the listener. But I want to say really quickly personally, and I think Glenn can say the same, and let me know. This particular program and its previous iteration, the client intake, has completely changed my business. If it were not for this program, I would not be making the income that I've been making. I wouldn't be seeing the same clients. I wouldn't have the same assessment and diagnostic tools from session to session, from month to month. And I'm eternally grateful for this program. Mr. Glenn, how do you feel about the Muscle System Specialist Program?
I could not agree with you more, Brandon. I don't know where I would be without this system. I mean, I think that success leaves clues, and it's really nice when somebody takes all those clues and packages them together and shows you how to make use of them. So absolutely fantastic program. And I could talk about it right now, but I won't belabor any further. I'll just agree with you and say, yeah, tremendous. I think every fitness and health professional should have to take this course. It's amazing.
Awesome, Glenn. So I think there's a couple quick things here. And I mean, it depends. If you're a personal trainer, I definitely would push you to go to exerciseprofessionaleducation.com to learn more about this program. Currently through COVID-19, Mr. Greg Mack, who is the founder, is offering some online course options. And if you're a listener, I'm hoping you can learn a little bit more about the educational background that Glenn and I are involved with, because frankly, I think it's really fun to know the provenance of where someone comes from both an education perspective and their worldview. Now, I will start off this whole thing by saying this, as I always kind of do, prefacing something like this. This is not the be-all and end-all. It is not the only program you should take. It is not the panacea business system. But I will say that Glenn and I both came from relatively complicated education worlds where we learned a bunch of crazy exercise stuff over the years. Really cool things about force physics and anatomy and different muscle system processes. But one thing I found I personally struggle with was how do you convey that information to a client through a sales communication process that makes sense, but is also ethical and turns into, for the client, lifelong healthy relationships with exercise. And for me, the Muscle System Specialist process, thank you, Mr. Greg Mack, really did that. It opened up my eyes and helped me have the tools to show my clients how exercise should be a lifelong process. You don't need to be a bodybuilder. You don't need to be a cardiomaniac, but some version of contraction can really help change your body for the good. And frankly, if you're struggling with aches and pains, it's amazing how finding the right configurations of exercises can potentially really help that or help make sure it doesn't get worse.
100% agree. I was so skeptical when I was suggested that I go to this course. And I was suggested to it by Day for Day. And I think maybe probably you secondarily, but Day for Day was really in my ear about it. And I thought to myself, man, I just spent like 10 grand on this other course. I spent this university education's worth of money. What is another course going to do? And it was actually the course that changed my life. And I feel like it's because, I mean, first it's an amazing evidence driven course. So everything that comes up in the course is backed by science and research. Everything from the meeting somebody and how to talk to people and speak about your product in a way that is open and honest and done with integrity, to how you would go about your assessments and how you make use of that assessment data information and how you convey that to a client. I mean, I remember there's a full hour on just communication in terms of how your brain formulates words and how when you talk to other people, they have to listen and then they have to make sense of them and then come up with their own ideas. And then they have to figure out how to respond and talk to you. I forget what it's actually called, communication science. Do you remember what it's called, communication science?
Transactional analysis?
No, it's something with an H. I forget what it was, but there was a full hour on just how human beings communicate. And I guess what I'm saying is at the end of the day is I put a very high stock on evidence and scientifically based processes. And I always have. And up until doing this client intake course and the certified muscle system specialist course, I did not know how to apply the scientific method to personal training and talking to people about what it is that I do at this level. And I'll be ever thankful to Greg Mack for this and the certified muscle system specialist course.
So if you're a listener, one of the big things that I would say is, I'm very fortunate enough to be one of the instructors for the program, for the Muscle Systems Specialist program. And I would say that it's a hard program to describe to a fitness professional because it's really two different type of programs squished together. It is absolutely a business model, and it's also a technical approach with how you work with clients. From the business model end, I don't know if anyone who's listening has ever experienced this, but personal training and fitness sales, if you've ever been to a commercial gym, if you've ever been to a personal training studio, it's usually very pushy, very, the ABCs always be closing for personal training and gym memberships. Mm-hmm. And this is what I learned is that I learned some very interesting strategies where you'd sit down, you'd ask some people some very personal questions about their body. Then you'd say, basically, no problem. I have the panacea to your insecurity about your weight or whatever it may be you're struggling with. If you sign up for my $5,000 program, sign this contract for 12 months, you are in and I will take care of you. And it's this kind of like exactly that, the panacea-esque approach. And I would still say to this day, if you go and meet with trainers or other group facilities, this is a very common sales process still. I don't want to talk too much about the sales process because I'm super excited about the technical stuff, but I will say that from the business model end, I was struggling too because I had this always be closing mentality that I learned years ago, but I didn't like it because I'd find that people were stuck in year-long contracts and really didn't like the process and they wanted to leave. And I'd have people that didn't want to be with me, but were in contracts, so they'd be with me, and then we'd have this communication, like you were just saying, that wasn't lining up, and it was an excruciating hour for both of us. And it just wasn't worth it. This process really creates an open-ended scenario where if the client doesn't want to be there, they don't have to be there. But with the way that we communicate more about exercise and how important skeletal muscle is with how they're struggling with how they're moving and their lifelong process, I find now that after years, I have a full-time schedule of clients who want to be here and are excited to be here and are ready to be here. And yeah, I just am so grateful for all of that. I think it's just amazing.
Yeah, there's nothing aside from not being able to pay your bills, because that comes with a huge amount of stress. There's nothing worse than having 7 hours of clients in a day and having 1/2 hour or 1 hour long session with somebody that you're just not looking forward to seeing. You never look forward to seeing them. For whatever reason, you're not breaching that topic with them. You're not talking about it because it's taboo. You're not supposed to be vulnerable with clients. That old way of quote unquote being professional, and that sucks. And you really don't have that with the muscle system specialist course. In fact, one of the things that I got out of it that I really appreciated, and I'm continually learning to do it, is anytime you feel uncomfortable with something, you double down on being vulnerable and being open and just discuss it and talk about it with the client or with whoever you need to in order to open up the dialogue and conversation. And it's amazing how much better both parties feel when you remove all the mystification, you remove any of the misinformation there might be, and you just play with your cards open. And in this way, you can really find out, like, hey, do you still want to work with me? Or do I still want to work with you? Or is this even making sense for either of us right now? And there's a whole bunch of other questions that might come along with that. But really what I'm getting to is, this course, if I got anything from it, was it taught me that it's really great and appropriate to be vulnerable and open with people and just lay everything out on the table. And as someone who came from the same background as you, which is that ABC always be closing world, this was totally different. And it just feels right. And it might even sound weird for me to say, but like I can sleep at night knowing that I don't have any of this added stress of the business because I'm working with a model that works, that I just have to go back and check to see if I check my game tape to see what I did really, really well, how I can improve, and knowing that because I'm doing everything with honesty, integrity, life feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said one thing, nothing from the trainer perspective is more excruciating than working with a client that you're not really enjoying the time. And the same thing to the client, from the client's perspective, they're coming in, they're like, wow, working with this person, this is not what I thought I signed up for. I'm not happy with this experience. Ultimately, this program, from a very very basic fundamental perspective, but so much more expansive, is really trying to teach you to build a lifelong sustainable practice with exercise. And if you have a self-sustaining practice where you have people that love being with you, people who love being with you will tell other people that could use your service that they should come see you. And if people love being with you, guess what? They're going to tell their amazing experience to other people. And so I find for a lot of trainers that get into this, Glenn, and they start this whole process, there's kind of this transitional period where they got clients in their world who are not super excited about being with them, or are with them for a few years, but haven't gone through some sort of rigorous process. They're not really in a process. They're just going through the paces, so to speak. They're in a routine. And then when they start doing a new way, having a sales process, a communication process, or an assessment process, some of those older people kind of wean off, which can be a really painful experience, because you're like, wow, I was working with this person for 4 years and they just disappeared. But those four people with you for 4 years, were they really happy with you? Like, were they just doing it because you were their, Tuesday and Friday routine? And when you get more people who are like, wow, they've been through the full mobility assessment process, they've been through the full education process, and they love you, they'll tell other people about you. And they'll say, wow, Glenn is a very thorough specialist. He knows everything about muscles. He knows so much about muscles that no matter what I come in with each day, he can always modify exercise for me too. If you got that hip problem you've been telling me about, Mary Sue, you should go see Glenn.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the clients are, we're talking about how we're benefiting so much for them, because the system is done with integrity. The clients benefit so much from it. I mean, one of the things about learning the technical stuff that you do in the Certified Muscle System Specialist course is you really learn how to work with any kind of body and any kind of goal. Before the Certified Muscle System Specialist course, if you gave me somebody who was 65, had osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and had joint replacements, I would have had no idea how to work with this person. I would have had maybe a small idea, but I wouldn't have been confident at all. And through my time learning through this methodology and understanding this approach that the course takes, learning how to collect the right information, learning how to make sense of the information, and then collate and corroborate all of it to make exercise and the way we apply force to somebody's body and the amounts that we apply force to somebody's body, that's exactly what exercise is. I can work with a 65-year-old person now with those conditions and not bat an eye, and look forward to it, because these are typically the kind of people that most other exercise professionals, even like health professionals, don't really know what to do with. And instead of it being a shotgun approach of like, let's try a whole bunch of stuff and see what works, we can now use our data collection and the way we go about assessing somebody and all the steps that come with that to narrow down our options and say, hey, here's where I think the best guess would be, and here's how we can pivot if this isn't going to work, and would you like to come along with me on this journey? And I love that. And I love that because I think that's what it's all about, is the journey, because exercise ought not be something that you do for twice a week for 8 weeks until your wedding day, or until that pain or discomfort goes away. If you want to have a healthy body that lasts you a lifetime, and you want to be a centurion, you have to take care of that thing every day. Maybe not, exercise with weights every day, but you've got to be taking care of it every day. And exercise ought to be a part of that. And the CMS provides you the framework to do that with anybody. It's truly amazing.
So Glenn, love that. So as a certified, let's get to some nitty gritty stuff, right? So if we talk about being, certified muscle system specialists, which in my opinion are the best fitness exercise professionals out there, what are some of the tools that you've learned through the Certified Muscle System Specialist program that really stand out to you, and why?
So I think just because the program is ordered this way, from the consultant role, learning how to talk to people with honesty and integrity in such a way that it's not a zero-sum game where like I win or they lose, or they win or I lose, where everyone wins. And that's the only way the relationship goes forward, is everyone always feels like they're winning and getting something out of the relationship. And the model that there is for that. And a large part of that model is the communication piece. How do we talk to clients about what it is that we do? How do we make sense of what we do in plain English? Like a very small example is we avoid using buzzwords. Most times when people hear a buzzword, and a buzzword is just some sort of like phrase or word that's a very specific to the exercise world, or very specific to a subset of a population. Every time we use a buzzword, it can throw people off. So if I say, oh, we'll do a cardiorespiratory test, or we're going to do, 5-rep max testing, you and I might know what that is, but other people have no idea what that is. And that puts them off, and it makes them feel uncomfortable because they've never heard of such a thing before. And people don't like to feel uncomfortable. And I don't want people to feel uncomfortable when they're with me. I want to be able to explain things to people in such a way that they understand. So I might say something to them like, hey, listen, I've got some cool tests. They're going to help measure your endurance and how long you can walk for. And when we do that test, it gives us an idea of how we can set up, different exercises for you to do on your own so you can keep walking the entire time through your entire life. Is that something you're interested in, right? So it's just something like that. And then I guess I'll say from a technical perspective, the assessment tool is pretty amazing. And so the assessment tool is actually a series of tools. It's looking at like a postural assessment, which is just how does your body hold itself when you're lying down and when you're standing. And we have range of motion assessments, which are just how much of an excursion can one joint do on one side and how much motion can you do. And now when we compare that to the other side, is it similar or different, and by how much? And there's all these other little, other mini assessments that we do in our global assessment. But then what we can do is take all that information and plot it out on a chart and explain to a client exactly what we're seeing in a way that makes sense to them. And this is revolutionary for an exercise professional, because most of the time when you are writing down information, you've got some notes and you might be taking some information, but you've got no way to put it all out in front of you. And you certainly don't have a system of way to explain it to a client. And if you do, it's a tidbit here, a tidbit there, but it's not really a satellite view. And this is, in my eyes, one of the big, WTF moments was like, holy smokes, I can actually explain to my client in plain English exactly what I'm seeing on their body and help them make sense of their sensations, help them make sense of exercise. Because once we're on the same page, we're going to go farther together. There's no way around it. I could talk about this for probably another half an hour, Brandon, but I'd love to hear from you what you think are some of the amazing things that you got out of the Certified Muscle System Specialist course and the client intake portion of it.
Yeah, I would say there's three kind of quick things. And the first one, to your communication note, would be the IR stuff. So an identity versus a role. So we all have our own identities, which is a summation, I would say, of our strengths and our weaknesses and our previous experiences. And if you need to take any steps forward to help you succeed. So if you know, hey, I want to have 10 new clients by the end of the week. And I said, okay, Glenn, well, what are the 10 things that you want to do? What are the 10 things you have to do to get 10 new clients by the end of the week? And you make a list of them. You say, well, I got to go out and I got to talk to 100 people and get at least 10 of them in. And I go, great. How are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to go to the mall and do all this stuff. Fantastic. Most of the time when you ask someone a question like that about what steps are required for them to succeed, and you give them a week or some deadline, I find that often, especially when it involves communicating with other people, most people won't do it. And it's not because procrastination. It's generally, in my experience, a fear of, well, boy, I don't want to call someone and get rejected. I don't know what it's like. I don't know how to word it. And so these fears, this racket that we have based off of previous experiences, which can go much deeper, which we won't for this podcast, I find are often, for professionals, their biggest barrier to help them succeed if they have some goal that they want to achieve. So for me, identity, learning what my roles are, and my role as a business owner, as a muscle specialist, as a salesperson, as a husband, as a father, all this stuff. Each one of these roles have different characteristics. And my personal insecurities about whatever insecurities I might have should play no role in how I conduct myself as a role professional. So I think that was a very important thing that I learned. And I'm very, very proud of learning that distinction, because for me, I do find that I believe that any level of success by any individual is 100% attainable if someone can look past and step past the racket that's slowing them down. The second thing very quickly would be the mobility profile, which is exactly what you were just talking about with the assessment process, is that with exercise and physics and all these amazing things we've learned, there are so many variables that we juggle when we're looking at someone's skin standing in front of us doing an exercise. And so the mobility profile helps us take a bunch of dynamic and static information and put it into a 2D representation crime scene to see exactly what's going on and find true positive motion problems versus false positive motion problems. In fact, if someone has a postural scenario where they're completely rotated to the left for some sort of postural deficit, and you see a limitation in left side trunk rotation, you have suddenly all this evidence to go, wait a second, you're not actually inflexible to left rotation. You're actually already there. Therefore, my visual representation of looking you right at the front, comparing symmetrical right to left motion is just not the same because you're already there. The mobility profile is one of my favorite tools. Like you just said, it helps us to share information with our clients. And I think one of the most brilliant, simple, but brilliant things that Greg ever did was to help create an individualized crime scene. And the last thing would be that I got, much like you, I got a lot of clients who are just over the age of 65 and over 70, and some that are really darn close to 80, if not a little older. And a lot of them don't want to be in a gym for multiple hours in a week. Some do, which I love those ones, but some don't want to be in here. And so this idea of diagnostic tools like qualitative manual assessments of motor control and biomotor configurationalism, where you're organizing joints in different scenarios to do a test of some sort to see if there's a strength difference using your hand or a dynamometer from left to right, and then designing an exercise based off of that client's individual control problems. I love that, because you can take someone and you can put them into a series of 2 or 3 joint positions on the left versus the right that you've never done with someone before and see a totally different force expression. You do some exercises to stimulate it that we might call a potentiation exercise or a contraction conditioning exercise. It gets stronger and the client says, I feel better, I feel lighter, and that ache in my arm is a little bit less. And then you can go on the gym and you can create an exercise using cables or machines that no one's ever seen before, that you completely came up by doing some detective work based off of a mobility profile and that client interaction, and you design a completely customized, unique exercise. Those 3 things, I don't mean to rant on, but I think that's all brilliant. I love it. And again, I'm so grateful for finding it all, because I love traditional barbell exercises like everyone else, but you can make up some really cool stuff to help people in a big way.
So Brandon, I appreciate all that stuff you shared. Can you tell me, what do you think makes the Certified Muscle System Specialist course different from other exercise and health courses out there?
So before we talk about that, I think that, in my opinion, personal trainers, if personal trainers want to really truly be exercise professionals, in my opinion, exclusively my opinion, there is a demographic of folks who are older with some joint problems and aches and pains, and people who are aging that 100% need resistance exercise more than people like you and I. You and I and young, healthy people, there's lots of great exercise options. They can go to classes and all this stuff. And I do think that, 20, 30, and 40-year-olds, if I was being super anal about creating healthy processes, growing as much muscle as you can in a healthy, safe way is one of the best things you can do as you age to make sure you've got the biggest motors as you are starting to deteriorate. But to answer your question, coming back and hanging my opinion on that point, is that the Muscle System Specialist program for me is by far, from both a communication business process and also a detective work process, the most detailed exercise assessment-based process that takes in error and takes in true positives to help you figure out say it like this: what is the least amount of exercise an individual can do, contraction scenarios, to improve someone's movement qualities, to help them get more out of what they love to do. Whatever they love to do, if they're struggling with how they're moving with it, they don't feel like they're feeling great about it, both the static and the dynamic assessment processes of the Muscle System Specialist program can truly help you figure out what exercise you can do to help you get towards that goal as fast and as safe as possible, medical approval required.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. The amount, I feel like there's the older population's more, I'm not saying resistant to resistance training exercise, but it's just not something they grew up with, right? Like our generation grew up with like gyms and weight training being the thing that you do. And I know my dad grew up in a generation where like cycling and racket sports were like the things that you do to stay fit. And resistance training, I mean, I don't want to echo your thoughts too much, but resistance training really is that thing that can, when you're at the age of 80, 85, make all the difference in your quality of life. And when we talk about exercise, just to be clear, and to like reiterate Brandon's point, exercise can be anything from doing if you want like a leg press set right to fatigue or failure, if it's appropriate for you and it lines up with your actual health goals, or it could be lying on a table and bringing your left leg out to the side almost as far as you can go and pushing into somebody's hand for 5 seconds. Those are two vastly different scenarios and input and output scenarios. However, each one could be appropriate for the person involved. And that's really what the Muscle System Specialist course is all about, is taking all that data and information that makes you, your age, your health history, your exercise history, your injury history, your preferences, your likes, your dislikes, your posture, your strength at each and every one of these joints, and figuring out, hey, what exercise, no matter how big, right, in quotations, or how small or how long or how short or whatever you want to look at, whatever exercise that you need to get to where you want to go as a human being. And that for me is really, I think, what sums up the Certified Muscle System Specialist course the most.
It's kind of like the Batman of fitness certifications.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Oh,
Brandon?
come on. I mean, well, because Batman is this detective with a utility belt, and that no matter what comes up and whoever he's got to battle and fight, he has some tactful way to swiftly access something in his belt or some strategy to approach the scenario and know how powerful the supervillain or weak or tactful or big or large or small. He's always got something that he can do to help stop that criminal. And so Batman with his utility belt and all of his toys, it's just like the Muscle System Specialist program, is you have all the tools required to help someone with exercise-based problems. And if you can create an exercise solution like Batman, you are good to go.
Can you tell that Brandon and I both really like superhero movies and superhero analogies?
All about the superhero analogies and the Muscle System Specialist program.
All about it, Brandon. All about it. Brandon, what else did you have next on your list of questions there? I know you shared them with me in the chat. I forget what they are, though.
I got one for you, Glenn. You have taken a profound amount of awesome fitness certifications over the years. If you don't mind me asking, based off of your personal training certification experience, what stood out about this program that was so different? I mean, we already touched on some mechanical points about the program, but you know, there are weekend warrior personal training certifications. I think you've taken some Olympic lifting ones, some manual muscle testing courses, some physics courses. What stands out being different between that course, those courses, and the muscle specialist course?
That's a great question. And I think this can be answered a couple different ways. I will say, first and foremost, I think philosophically, the Certified Muscle System Specialist course, and Greg Mack especially, because it really is his baby, is that Greg is open to being wrong about the way we do things. And in fact, we've changed the way we do things in the Certified Muscle System Specialist program, from the ways that we apply force and the ways that we've tested and the way we look at these things. It's evolved over the past 5 or 6 years since I got into it. And ever since day one, Greg's always said, you know, like, I'm happy to discuss this. I'm happy to be proven wrong. Let's look at this differently. And a lot of other certifications I took, especially the one that I took, you know, before the Certified Muscle System Specialist course, it was kind of like, this is the way. And I want to say it was our way or the highway, because no one really came out and said that, but it was very explicit, like, this is the way, like, this is the answer. And most courses, I don't think, leave themselves open to be discussed or to be challenged. And Greg and the Certified Muscle System Specialist course, it's always open to be challenged. And people do, in our group chats, have wonderful discussions. You know, in that same vein, Greg refers to all of us as his colleagues. He does not refer to himself as like the owner of this to us or to many other people. I think he's always wants to get involved in collaboration with us. He doesn't see himself as like the guy or the guru. he's just put together this program and wants to help as many people as possible. So philosophically, the egolessness of the program is amazing. And maybe I shouldn't say egolessness, because we all have ego, right? I mean, there's no way of getting away from any of that stuff. But like, it is definitely has the least amount of ego and the most amount of openness of any program I've ever been involved in. What the question was, like, what makes this different? Was that the question, Brandon?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, I'm going to start there. I mean, that's the big thing. I mean, I could go on for a while. I mean, but I think everything stems really from that one spot, is just Greg Mack, because he's so open to being wrong and he's so open to seeing things done a better way. This course evolves quicker than any other courses I've ever seen. And that's amazing. It's just amazing.
Fantastic, Glenn. I couldn't agree more. In my opinion, if you're a fitness professional or an exercise person and you're looking to make you want to have a career as an exercise consultant, you want to have an opportunity to be in this thing for decades as a professional, and you want to truly help people, I think the Muscle System Specialist program currently is the best and most encompassing program that will give you almost a franchise level amount of detail, including business and sales process, as well as technical processes. It is absolutely very complicated when you start getting into muscle biomechanics, joint mechanics, assessing mobility profiles, coming up with plans, and learning all about potentiation and IR stuff. It absolutely is one of the most complicated 5-weekend programs I've ever taken, but it is the encompassing. And I will say confidently, if you are someone who's already in the fitness industry and you're trying to make a big splash and you're struggling to figure out how to make a proper living at this and turn this into an adequate business, all you need is a small space with a table and some exercise stuff, or you get into a gym and you got lots of tools. All of that works out very, very well to help you have a full career as an exercise professional. So in turn, Muscle System Specialist program is one of the coolest programs that Glenn and I have taken. But Glenn, I've got a super profound question to ask you, and I've been struggling to figure out how to ask it because it just makes me so insecure to figure out how you're going to answer this question. But Glenn, what is your pick of the week?
Yes, Brandon. My pick of the week. I actually have 2 picks of the week. I'm coming hot with both of them. First pick of the week, believe it or not, is the Ontario government. So they released their new way that they're taking a look at closures and restrictions and openings and closing of businesses. And it is much more nuanced than the previous ones. And I appreciate that. I think one of the reasons, and this kind of ties into our conversation today, one of the reasons I really like the Certified Muscle System Specialist program is because it is incredibly nuanced, probably the most nuanced exercise and health program that is around in the world right now. And that nuance is what allows things to move forward in the best way possible. And so I really appreciate right now they're getting some more nuance from the Ontario government in terms of being able to work and keeping businesses alive and afloat, but also taking care of the people we love and care. It really is a little bit more of an all-encompassing approach, in my opinion. The second pick of the week is more of a turn. It is Mario Kart for the Nintendo Switch. Louise and I have been playing a little bit together. We usually don't game too much together, but we have been playing a little bit, and we just have a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun just to laugh and be lighthearted with each other. And what better way than to take some of our favorite nostalgic characters from our childhood, put them in little race cars and try to blow each other up. So I love doing that with her. I appreciate the nuance the Ontario government's brought to the way it's looking at reopening business and taking care of our people. Those are my picks of the week. Brandon, you always make it easy to talk to you, so I always feel comfortable asking you this question. Brandon, what is your pick of the week?
Well, to your Mario Kart point, my wife and I have a Nintendo 64 hooked up at our house, vintage. And Mario Kart is my wife's favorite game, and I would argue that she is unbeatable on N64. And I am a Super Smash Brothers master. And I don't mean to sound so arrogant, but I was undefeated in college in any game one-on-one with anybody on 64 specifically. No other platform. So I love that. That's awesome. I think that's great. So my pick of the week, to your Ontario point, One thing that I've been pretty adamant about is trying to advocate for local businesses, because in Newmarket, well, across Ontario, businesses have really been, especially restaurants and gyms, have been really shattered and really crippled by the second shutdown, COVID-19, and the fears of going outside. So what I'm trying to do, I'm going to use this platform to try and share some places that I really like in town that are small businesses I think that are struggling. One of my favorite businesses, I've mentioned a few in the last few podcasts, if you've been following along. There's a burger joint on Main Street in Newmarket called Ground Burger Bar. The owner's name is Grant. They make arguably one of the most fantastic hamburgers I've had in town. It's kind of a gourmet hamburger shop, so you got lots of options to put whatever you want on it. You can I think you can have duck on it if you want to. Like, you can pretty much put anything on these burgers. So Ground Burger Bar, as along with many other restaurants in town, were shut down because of this Ontario Phase 2 modified shutdown. So if you're listening to this and you want to support some Newmarket local businesses, or you're in Newmarket for the first time, I would absolutely check out Ground Burger Bar on Main Street. Tell Grant that Brandon and Glenn sent you from Strata, and he will give you a high five. Probably not, because he can't touch you because of COVID-19, but he'll give you a good hamburger, and I promise you'll have a good time.
Lovely, Brendan. I appreciate that you support local businesses. I appreciate that, Brandon. As per usual, everybody, thank you so much for listening. We love doing this podcast week in, week out. It's one of the things that I always look forward to. If you are enjoying it as much as I am, please give us a 5-star review. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and Podbean. And our brick and mortar facility, Brandon, take it away.
We are in Newmarket, 17705 Leslie Street. If you guys want to check us out, we are reopening, and really excited to show you the facility and show us all our cool machines. And it would be great to have you. Glenn and I want you exercising pain-free. We hope you all have a wonderful day. And I think November is turning into a month of muscles. We are working on getting an interview with Mr. Greg Mack. We're just waiting for Glenn and I to be able to connect in person so we can chat with Mr. Mack and give you guys some cool content to learn more about advanced muscle stuff. Glenn, thanks so much for your time, man.
Brandon, I love you, buddy. Take care.